Right, well, this here is meant to be my £30 gaming PC that I got off Facebook Marketplace, and I've had it sitting around for a little while because even the thought of looking at this has been a bit of a painful one, to be honest, but I am quite excited to finally look at it. As you can probably make out from the looks of the computer, it looks like it's actually come from Workstation because it's been quality control tested in July of 2023, and looks like it might have been someone's office computer because the coffee stains on top of it. The front of the computer has bits falling down, which is completely normal for this channel. And when we look inside it, we can see clearly that someone's taken what they wanted out of it. I'm assuming there were a lot of hard drives in here at one point because there's so many odd SATA cables just everywhere. There is a rather nice 850 watt Zalman power supply, a random, I've just got a load of dust on myself, AMD Firepro S170X2, so a dual GPU graphics card, another graphics card on top. We've got an Intel cooler, which is fine, and as some of you keen-eyed viewers may have noticed already from possibly even the thumbnail, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 RAM sticks in here. And I'm not too familiar with what RAM sticks they are because the guy selling this knew nothing about computers. It was just one that he ended up with because he does clearances. And it looks like the RAM we've got is 4GB DDR3, so 4, are they all just, yeah, they're all the same sticks, 24 gigs of RAM, and I have no clue if this works. I mean, it looks like X58, which is something we've never looked at on this channel because this is apparently a gaming computer. I don't know what gaming you'd be doing on it. I don't even think this has a fan. I mean, it's also not actually plugged in. Has it got? I mean, of course it's going to have some sort of 6-pin on here, unless they've removed the 6-pin. I mean, we have actually got a SanDisk SSD. Looks like an OEM unit. All of the cables are just being shoved behind the back. Because I can see a dual 6-pins on here. I suppose we plug it in and find out what it actually does. Because there's a mystery graphics card and a random Firepro. I mean, it's X58. It makes sense that this was some sort of workstation, but it looks quite a modern part. Maybe they upgraded? I really don't know what I've managed to get myself into on this one because, yeah, this doesn't look like it's going to be an easy or simple one, to be honest. But yeah, there's a reason I've been putting this off. The amount of troubleshooting this might need? Does it work? Oh, what a lovely noise. That's the CPU. Right, just pull that up slightly. And it's even got an operating system on here. I don't know, I mean, that looks like Windows 10. Got two users, Owner and Telford. I take it their password wasn't just password. I should have a Windows installed somewhere, so we can unplug this. Maybe we'll take a little look what's on there in a minute. Problem is I don't like snooping through people's personal bits, especially when their computers ended up at a recycler. They've taken out the hard drives and left it in this sort of state. So we know we've got the Sabertooth X58 board, a rather decent board, low default values. It looks like at least the system as a whole does turn on. It's very quiet because it's got this massive 140mm fan at the top. But I don't see how they were providing any cooling to the Firepro. Okay, it's an expensive graphics card. Sells for about 80 quid. It's got a lot of 16 gigs of VRAM. So we're definitely gonna have to try and get the graphics card working because, well, it's a Tonga chip, 2 of them on one card, 1792 cores, and 16 gigs of VRAM. 8 gigs per graphics card. But we do in fact have a Core i7-950. It is 4 cores, 8 threads, lots of L3 cache. Oh, look at the score you get out of the box. I mean, this is probably because I've been testing old Xeons and it's doing better than that, but out of the box, already scoring 1470. 24 gigs running in dual channel. It's not clocked very high. It's clocked at about 1300 megahertz, but that's fine. It's a GK208, so Kepler. Let's install some drivers real quick. I mean, I'm going to see if it'll survive me plugging in Ethernet. I mean, the guy selling this, as he said, it's just a computer he had to get rid of. He doesn't know much about him. He just wants rid. And to be fair, 30 quid for something that was probably going to end up in the bin, I'm not really arguing. But we'll download the final Kepler drivers. I am a little bit amazed that it's already working. Right, so we may have found our first issue. I've come back to the computer after it's finished downloading drivers, and it is locked up. Yeah, there's no response at all from anything. So we'll try a restart. But yeah, it is It's filthy. I mean, whoever used the PC was certainly a smoker. I can say that much at least. I can kind of get why they're selling it as gaming PC. It does look, and I mean, it does, by modern standards, it doesn't look very gaming PC, but it looks technical, which is something. It's also got weird marks, like someone had it taped up. Maybe they taped the power connectors to it. Right, so we have got the GT710. I can't remember much about them other than they were a display adapter. That's the only case I've ever used them for. Sorry, memory we're using 48%. Slots in use, 1 of 6. 4GB other. Well, that may have been the cause of our crash because it was saying it was using half our memory, and I thought there's no way it's using that much. But it's now limited us to 4GB plus other, with 8.9 megabytes being hardware reserved. I don't know what it's doing. It's stopped detecting our RAM all of a sudden. The ones that I haven't touched aren't really clipped in, so maybe they were just unclipped. Right, what is it saying now? Is it actually detecting our memory? 4 gigs. 4GB other. Right, we're beginning to understand why this thing was so cheap. It knows there's 24 gigs there. Windows is for some reason deciding that it is only going to detect... Yeah, and it's detecting it all. I don't like the coil whiny noises it makes when I'm asking it to do anything. It's only done that since we added graphics drivers. It was originally detecting all of the memory. I am very stumped, so I've gone ahead and I've installed even more up-to-date drivers for the graphics card, so these ones are dated 2024. But something weird is going on with memory allocation, and I don't think it's the Windows install. I think it's something to do with this weird Firepro that's been installed. I'm just going to run it through 3D Mark, make sure it's not overheating, make sure it's actually running properly, and then we'll find out why it's only utilising okay, that's the only one it's using. We can actually see down here. So the only slot it's actually using, if we actually hover over it, it does tell us. I didn't know it did this. Slot 3... It has got 4 gigs available at 1066 megahertz. So 1, 2, 3. Slot 3 is this one, and that is the only one it's detecting as available for Windows use, which makes 0 sense. Well, it does appear that there's definitely something funky going on with the RAM, because even 3D Mark only detects 4 gigs, despite CPU-Z detecting all of it, but admittedly not in the right mode. So I'm going to run it through TimeSpy anyway, and I'm going to get a score at the end of this. It's going to be terrible, and then we're going to have to start tearing things apart. And we're going to have to start with the RAM, try and get that sorted, make sure it doesn't lock up anymore, and then find out why it has a Firepro. I'd imagine for workstation tasks, this was, well, you've got plenty of RAM, you've got a decent processor, and then you've just decided I'm going to add a Firepro, and then, yeah, it's got more and more bodged as time's gone on, but still passed Office checks until 2023. 1 frame per second, we'll take that right now. Not exactly gaming PC, but of course, Marketplace exists. I've never really tested these original Core i7s on an X58 setup, and I've heard good things, and to be fair, that is good performance. Compared to the graphics card in here, that i7 probably can do quite a bit of modern gaming. I think the Firepro only feels warm because the GT710 is scorching. Our graphics score is abysmal. Our CPU score is actually about on par with the Xeon we looked at last week. Is there any throttling going on? Yes. No, the processor is running at 100 degrees, then throttles its way back down. So thermals are a problem. 3.2 gigahertz down to about 2.5, going down as low as 2.2 gigahertz. So there's a good computer in here somewhere, but out of the box, this thing is awful. Really, really awful. Right, let's get started taking a little look at that RAM, shall we? Because we're going to have to do something about that. I couldn't help myself because it was sold to me as a gaming PC. I've got to know how it's going to perform. And with GTA 5 in 1024 by 768, to be fair, this is the Enhanced Edition, and it is eking out in and around 30 FPS. The processor is already at 100 degrees and is probably about to begin thermally throttling. Yes, it is. And our graphics card is running at 100% utilization to produce these very questionable looking visuals. To be fair, frame times are actually in and around levels that I would call okay, but that is all the while our processor is not throttling. You can see our frame rate does actually slightly increase when it stays at 3.2 gigahertz, but the moment I start looking around again, the clock speed goes down because it touches 100 degrees and dropped to mid 2.5 gigahertz. So, Yeah, I wonder what happens when we get in a vehicle. This is so bad. We've got a processor running at 100 degrees. We've got a display adapter that is functional but not great and is also quite hot, just a touch. We have a Firepro that we can't currently use, and RAM that is capped at 4 gigabytes. And to be fair, the 4 gigs of RAM, and this is why I think something's definitely up with it, as much as we're using 3.6 gigabytes of RAM, it's not acting like we have only got 4 gigs available. Usually GTA 5, especially the Enhanced Edition, is remarkably unhappy on this little RAM, and it's when you start seeing the textures start loading in, and lots of problems. None of that. I do think our next port of call is to turn this off, let it cool down, and then we're gonna have to start taking things apart. Because even if we just get it clean, at least it gives us a good base to work from, and then we can start trying to get maybe that Firepro into action. Where do we even begin? I mean, we're just gonna have to take it all apart, and as we go, document the problems we find. Right, let's bring this thing down actually onto the desk and see what we're working with. Yeah, that is nicotine dust. For those long nights in the office working with your Firepro and... oh, it's always nicotine dust, isn't it? That's how you get them cheap. Right, let's get some of these bits out so we can see what we're working with. That is in fact an MSI GT710. People are still paying 30 quid for these. I don't know why. Okay, it's stiff in there. It's been in there a while. Lovely looking graphics card, isn't it? I mean, people are spending strong money on these, but there's no fan. So how are they getting the airflow? I mean, this could well and truly be dead. But also, do you see what I'm talking about? This has 2 graphics cards on it. This is a cool card. I'd love to try and get that working. We have 24 gigs of DDR3 at... I actually don't know the clock speed on this. I'm going to guess about 1300 megahertz. And then we have this mess. What is the state of the thermal paste? We need to know that. Oh, these have been on here for a while. Probably over a decade, because they do not want to move. There's a chance the plastics on the pins are cooked. It is in fact one of the coolers I was on about, because underneath this, if that ever was thermal paste under there, yeah, that's just turned to some goo. This has a big old copper slug through it. So despite the fact this is completely caked in nicotine dust, that's a good cooler. That's a nice cooler. And the pins don't look too bad. We can save that. Sorry, I've had to bring the camera in, because look at the state of this. Oh, that's a lovely type of dust, that, isn't it? Yeah. Look at that thermal paste. That's a solid object, that thermal paste. That don't spread, that scrapes. How lovely. So yeah, that'd be why that was running at 100 degrees. Under here should be an actually quite cool CPU. One of the big old original HEDT Core i7s. That actually cleans up okay. We might be able to get away with leaving that in the socket to protect the pins. Right, we're going to have to take off the rear panel. We can now see the extent of the cable management. It does have PCI Express 8 pins, which are poorly cable managed in. Yeah, there's another one down here as well. Okay, so if we can get the Firepro working, we do actually have 2 decent power lanes for it. The stupid designs, like just, oh look, just chuck that wherever it'll fit. And like, you could just try and route it round behind. You could stick it behind the heat sinks and have it run under the graphics card and come around like that, for example. Oh, there we go. That's why that fan is so slow. This fan is just a dongle adapter. So that's why that fan does nothing. I'm gonna get to work and I'm gonna try my best to try and restore this to any degree of former glory it once had. Right, so I've gone through, I've given the computer a little bit of a clean up. I've not yet put the Firepro back in the PC because until I actually go through and sort out some jerry-rigged cooling solution and try and get to that output, we can't do much with this at the moment, but we will be trying in a minute. At the moment, the main issue though is only finding 8 gigs of RAM. Which is so weird because it's all in here. I've not actually touched it. So why don't we start with just 1 stick and then work our way through, which is a lot of work on a board with this many sticks of RAM. But we may have just found our reason why someone decided to get rid. It's funny about RAM. So let's see, does it boot with just 1 stick? I'm going to guess no. So is the memory controller off or dying? Maybe the RAM has died. That is working. That one does nothing. That one works as well. That one works as well. That one works. As of the moment, these 2 sticks do nothing. Okay, so it posts with the 4 ones that we've just tested. So with those 2 sticks that didn't want to post with, it will post if they're in there, but how much RAM does it now detect? Is it just going to find all 24 gigs? 16 gigs? It looks like we have 2 dead sticks, which could have been the reason they got rid of this in the first place. But at the same time, it's very rare to see RAM die like that, so I'm going to give these a clean up, and then we'll try them again, but if we've only got 16 gigs, we've only got 16 gigs. There's not much more I can do about that. And all the symptoms are, they're saying that these are dead RAM sticks. Then again, X58 is an interesting one. Well, the RAM's been cleaned, but honestly, I think it's done for. So it looks like we still got 16 gigs of DDR3 out of it, but fairly underwhelming result given that originally it did boot with 24, and we watched it die in real time, so I'm not happy, but I don't think this is going to have fixed it. Yeah, still 16 gigs of RAM. We can boot up to Windows, we can see what it says. I mean, I'd imagine CPU-Z is still going to detect them because it's a very weird failure. So yep, it has detected 16 gigabytes. It recognises we're using the first 4 slots, but if we go to memory here, it is still detecting 24 gigabytes, apparently in triple channel. So if we bench this, apparently we should get a better score. Hopefully as well it's also not overheating, because it's boosting up to 3.2 gigahertz. I didn't realise these things use 150 watts and it's using every single watt it can. No, still up to 90 degrees. And that's on a clean, yeah, that's on a clean cooler with fresh thermal paste. Core 3's doing the best at 87 degrees, but everything else is still nearing in on 100. It's not quite throttling range yet, which is nice, but I'm going to dabble around and see if I can do any more tuning, but I am so stumped on this. This is a weird RAM failure. So I have just applied a little bit of an overclock. I've also set the fans to turbo mode. We'll wait and see if they work. So the processor should have a little bit of a mild boost. I've overclocked the graphics card, if you can even call it that, a tiny smidge. I'm just going to throw it up into a game, see what it does, maybe run it through 3D Mark. And then I really want to start dabbling around with the Firepro. So while we let this load up into Steam, see, this is the thing. We can't just get something normal, can we? We can't just get something that is going to work. That's exactly the reason I've been putting off this video. The amount of work it's taken to get to this point, it's already 5 o'clock in the evening, and I've ran 3D Mark on it once. The rest of the day's just been troubleshooting. Well, with all the overclocking and cleaning, performance looks the exact same. CPU temperatures, though, are looking better. That's about the only thing that is. So yes, our CPU score has gone up, our GPU score has gone up, it's now ranked good. Processor temperatures are now in and around 85 degrees when running a game, which is on the toasty side, but still much less than the 100 degrees it was before. And with our GT 710 running with an overclock, we are now nearly managing a constant 30 frames per second. What a gaming PC, what a machine. All it's taken is tweaking, overclocking, cleaning. It still doesn't run right, but hey, we have 16 gigabytes of RAM being usable, 24 gigs being recognized, and it's getting console-style frame rates in below high-definition resolutions. That is the exact reason why I want to get this Firepro put in here. Even as a workstation card, 2 GPUs, crossfire, multi-GPU, so, I don't know. And I'm so confident this is going to work. I'm going to screw it in. Explains the quality of the power supply as well, because if they are running a Firepro, this thing is going to be a bit power hungry. Then again, the i7 alone is using 150 watts, so this entire system, power efficiency, out the window. This is not going to be enough airflow, but we'll try. This is why I didn't want to start this. This is why I've been putting it off for so long. But I don't think that display port on the back of it is actually active, which would explain the GT 710, which is an interesting combo to use, but I suppose if it worked for them, maybe it'll work for us. It is posting, but we're going to have to swap them round, aren't we? Because I think the Firepro needs to be back down the bottom, and then the GT will be the actual display card. So how will they do it? Were they just running it without airflow? For all we know, this card is dead. There should be something not recognized. Okay, there we go. Video controller VGA compatible. This is the Firepro. Only for use with open source GIM software for KVM based. Oh no, it's installing R9285X. Wait, is it installing? Is it installing straight up as Tonga? So if you look here, we've got the GT 710, our display adapter, And we have the R9 series and R9 285X series. So it's two R9 285s, which is a graphics card we've seen before on this channel. I actually bought one when they were new. And it's two of those on one PCB. Kind of insane. What drivers has it actually installed? That would mean the modified Nemes drivers would work, no? I think because I already had modified drivers on here, that's what it's installed, is gaming drives. Very, very interesting, with 8 gigs per card. So theoretically, if we disable the GT710 and then we launch, say, Crysis, is it going to be able to pull through that it will run on the Radeon? We're asking Windows to do things that I don't even think it knows how to do. It could be doing CPU rendering, to be fair. Now we've got ourselves a bit of a predicament. Does 3D Mark actually detect this as dual R9 285s? We've got the GT710 with the R9 285X and the R9 285X. Paired with the i7 950, we can select rendering device as the R9 285X. And then if we click run, I don't think there's a chance it launches. There is a very slim chance it launches. 3D Mark probably hates what I submit, because who else is going to be submitting a result like this? It's working. It's 15. Okay, this could actually work. If we can find a way to make the custom drivers for GCN function, we have got a dual graphics card with 16 gigs of memory that we might be able to bodge to working. When you search for gaming on these, nothing comes up. So we are going to have to make this up as we go along, but it's working. It is working. I honestly wasn't expecting this to work because this is not a gaming setup at all, and no one has managed to get this to work, but somehow we've done it. No one has ever submitted a score from an original Core i7 and two R9 285s on a single card in the form of a Firepro displayed at a GT710. And our graphics side score, keep in mind, this is just with one card, because this isn't utilizing both of them. We are now CPU bottlenecked, apparently. Now, our CPU temperatures did get up to 100 degrees as expected. Our graphics temperatures only got up to 80. So we are actually giving it just enough cooling with our double fan setup. There's only one way to find out, and that's to load up into a game and see if it manages to do anything. Because if we can get Crossfire working, 16 gigs of memory and two R9 285s? I mean, the R9 285 I had was limited by VRAM. It had so much more power to give. But there you go. It's taken the best part of a day. This could actually be a gaming PC. And I have no words to explain how weird it's going to be if we get something running on it. It's not actually letting us choose which graphics card we want to default to. We've got GT710 or power saving GT710. Because my thoughts are, if Windows won't let us change the graphics card, maybe we can do it through the AMD drivers, but then we're actually going to need the drivers themselves. So if we try and force installing additional components... Now what I'm hoping is that by forcing this installer to use the modified installer, we should be able to actually have working AMD gaming drivers on the Firepro setup. None of this has ever been attempted or done before, but if someone was going to figure it out, it's going to be us on a hardly working X58 gaming PC. We've managed it, so we've got the Adrenaline gaming drivers. I have no idea what it's going to say about this setup. If we go to hardware, yes, AMD does apparently detect these as two R9 285s. This is a ridiculous setup, but no, it is running them. And they are from 2016. Okay, we can actually select which graphics card we want to use. Okay, let's see if it actually launches not using the GT710. Now, I don't think it is recognizing the Firepro because it's saying we've only got 2 gigs of VRAM available. But then it is also... No, it is running on the NVIDIA card because it's enabling TXAA. So that hasn't worked. Okay, it is launching. And it looks like we're back to software rendering again. I'm trying to think, what if we take that out and we put in any Radeon display adapter? The R7240. Right, so we do actually now get graphics options that have the Firepro, or at least its GPU equivalent, as an option. So I'm going to set it to high performance. To add more pain to the saga, it now no longer gives us a display at all. It was working. And then it's decided all of a sudden that no, it no longer wants to work. This is why you don't try gaming on workstations. Because the performance is there. But trying to make it happy? Not fun. I've finally done it. I've got our first proof of concept in a game. The game is CSGO, but as you can see by these two little lines here, when we swap to this full screen application, which is of course CSGO, if we just load up into, say, a competitive match on Dust 2 offline, I'm not fussed about processor load. We know that process is working. Yes, it's a bit toasty. No, I'm not happy about it, but hey, it's not throttling anymore, which is nicer than it was. If we get in-game here, and then we tab back out, it should say that our Firepro is actually what's doing the rendering. Now, the only reason this is now happening is because the driver for the R7 240 has malfunctioned, meaning Windows is now even more confused about what is happening, but it's working in our favour, because it's recognising this as a card, it's allowing it acceleration, but it's not allowing it to be the 3D renderer. Whereas this is now our 3D renderer. There's a reason no one tries to do this, because it is very stupid, and it is a lot of headache to even get to this point. Okay, we're in game. If we tab back out, yes, we can see GPU load is up there, memory is being allocated, 730 megabytes is being allocated, and our frame rate is seeming very solid. I mean, I can't get the frame rate counter up right now, but at the same time, given we are also running this offline, so that old Core i7 is having to do a lot of the work, we do have proof of concept. We are getting graphical acceleration in a game on the Firepro, and that is what is dealing with everything going on. Source games are weird. Source games like working like this, which is what I give them credit for. The problem is when you start getting into modern games that don't even like working properly, well, yeah, they don't like recognizing setups like this for good reason. Because why would you want to recognize a setup like this? Yep, we can see there, we do have GPU utilization. It is now detecting the R9285. It is utilizing the graphics card. It's not software rendering. Windows does some weird things with VSync, and when it's not too sure what to display it as, I'm not too sure. Usually, it used to be exclusive full screen would fix this. But the problem is, it doesn't seem to want to do that today. I don't want to give up on utilising the Firepro, because it would be really cool to actually use that today, and I'm already probably aware that this video is probably quite long already at this point with the amount of troubleshooting we're doing, but it would be wrong if we didn't try. I want to try and get it working, because half the value of the system at this point is in that processor, which works mostly fine, and this graphics card. And I think what we're going to try and do is remove all the drivers, start again from scratch, and we are going to try and use maybe a DirectX 9 graphics card in there. So Windows is allowed to know it's there, but for modern APIs, it won't even try and use it. It'll just default back to the Firepro. And that is my best bet. And I'm not too sure it's going to work. In theory, it makes sense, because that way it gets drivers for both cards, but when it's anything modern, it will alternate back to the Firepro. So I'm going to see what I've got on hand, and then we're going to try and add in some sort of awful DirectX 9 card to try and make this work. So run DDU, get rid of all drivers, and we're going to start again from scratch. So I installed a HD 4350, just some basic Terascale display adapter, and as we all know, Terascale hardly likes to work in the modern world, but in this very specific instance, it does look like it's doing what we want it to do. I mean, it's refusing to install drivers, and when it does, it usually installs them wrong. But if we look over at our graphics card, the R9285X, if you want to call it that, we can see that it is actually seeing full GPU load. And no, we're back to no frame rate at all, and moving to windowed mode does not improve things. Right, I'm going to spend another hour trying to get this to dabble around and work. I can't get it to work properly. Now, I know that makes a lot of sense, but look at this. Have you ever seen Counter-Strike 2 run like it's wobbling in real time? It's the strangest experience ever. I mean, look, you can see it bouncing back and forth. And some people are going to say, oh, that's because you're running 2 GPUs. We're not. We're only trying to use just half of this and try displaying out the old 4350 no luck. I'm going to try one more display adapter in here as a frame buffer, and I don't know what else to try. I mean, I've spent hours on this, and we've had one proof of concept, which was really just Time Spy. And then, of course, I suppose CSGO worked fine, which is something, but this is just... We're getting symptoms of that I didn't even know were possible. So yeah, turn this off. I'm going to go find an even sketchier display adapter. Hey look, it's the MSI card everyone loves with the funky heatsink, which is also an ATI card. So maybe if we go older and it just falls completely... If it just goes to some sort of fallback mode where it can just allow pass-through. That's all we want. Because we can get utilization, we can get it done. We just need Windows to try and understand what we want it to do, which of course Windows never understands what you want it to do. We only really have VGA output. I've got a VGA cable here. By the end of the day, I would like to have some benchmarks run on the system, but I don't know whether that's going to happen. I don't know whether it's funny that the Radeon X series actually works better on Windows 10 and 11 than Terascale does, but now we have a new problem. Because everything seems to be a problem, where we're now getting code 38. See if this actually wants to work this time before I go completely insane. Things actually seem promising. Now GTA 5 Enhanced Edition, no, stop launching, doesn't want to actually initialize because it's getting very, very confused. However, I think the legacy version might actually have a chance of working properly. Okay, no DirectX 10 or 11 Apple runtime found, please install latest DirectX runtime. What if we try sign DirectX 12? Try Cyberpunk. I don't think this is going to work. If it does, I will be amazed. There are no words. It is launching Cyberpunk 2077. This apparently works. Okay. Right, let's see. Cyberpunk 2077 runs. It's running fine. Right, can we see frame rate? Can we get MSI Afterburner running? This is just... to no end, makes no sense. Because it's entirely down to if the application can understand this setup at this point. So GPU 2 is the one being utilised. Let's go full screen. Yeah, now it's just flashing up in the background slowly and ominously. But there's proof of concept, it was running at 50 FPS for literally a second. Okay, I'll try and get back in game and then we'll see if it runs Cyberpunk somehow. Right, so let me try and explain the entire situation. We have the Firepro installed with gaming drivers for the R9285, of which we have 2 of them, each of which has 8 gigs of VRAM. The Radeon X300 I've added here is running its actual up-to-date drivers, which are for Windows Vista, but it will allow it to display over VGA the signal from this, because Windows knows enough about it to say, I'm not going to let DirectX 12 applications try and start on here. Because of this, it means we do actually have it to the point where it will launch modern games. Now Cyberpunk, I've accidentally hit the high preset, which is probably a little bit too much for the system, because, well, it's only using 1/2 of the graphics card, so what I'm going to do is drop it back down to low, which is where it was. Keep in mind, it's not actually meant to be running these drivers, so... right, I forgot. Applying settings does kill the entire application. It's definitely a balancing act, because I think a lot of our limitations right now is also that the X300 doesn't like displaying modern applications, which is fair enough, it is quite old, so I'm going to drop this back to 720p and see if it's happy. Okay, yeah, it's happy at 720p. Let's bring up GPU-Z in the corner so we can actually see the utilization. Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly utilizing the card properly, but it is utilizing the VRAM, it is utilizing the core, it's not running... I'd say it's not running too hot, no, it is running very hot because our cooling solution is downright awful, but it is playing Cyberpunk on this awful X58 PC that doesn't even really have a graphics card. So I'm going to call this a success. It's taken 2 days, but we do have it running a game. And it's playing it at sort of 20 to 25 FPS, which is good enough. And honestly, good enough is all there has to be after the amount of faffing around this has been. There is probably only going to be about maybe 5 benchmarks in this video because most things still don't like working. But I am now going to try and benchmark this system. So, yeah, that's good enough. So before I get ahead of myself with the rest of the testing I've done, just what are the specifications of our £30 Facebook Marketplace gaming PC? I would throw up the entire full listing, but unfortunately this listing was from February. That's how long I've had this sitting around, fearing to touch the thing, because, well, I've just put it off for that long, but I do have a few messages to show that I did pick it up from Marketplace. Our CPU is an Intel Core i7-950, which is one of the HEDT, one of the original workstation Core i7s, with 4 cores and 8 threads at 3.3 GHz. It also comes with plenty of cache and plenty of features despite its age. In terms of graphics cards, we do actually have a GT 710, which is nothing more than a basic display adapter, but one that people are admittedly still spending anywhere from £10 to £30 on, and more excitingly, we have an AMD Firepro S7150X2, which is like 2 R9 285s or R9 380s on one PCB. It's designed for virtualization and CAD tasks more than anything, maybe 3D rendering as well, but we are going to try and use it as a gaming graphics card today, because otherwise it would be quite a boring video, because, I mean, the GT 710 really isn't all that. We have 24GB of DDR3 that's meant to be running in quad channel. Unfortunately, there's some weird things happening. Maybe the processor's been completely fried from running at 100 degrees for far too long, but for some reason the BIOS and Windows will only detect up to 16GB of this memory working. The weird thing is, other programs will actually detect 24GB, but can't use it. We got a 120GB SSD included, it runs a decent Asus X58 motherboard, we're using Windows 10 IoT today, and we also got a really rather decent 850W Zalman power supply, and one of these older Antec cases that people are crazy about. Personally, not a huge fan myself, I find them very bulky and cumbersome, but from their time they were pretty decent. And all of this today cost us just £30. Now, for some people that may have found all the troubleshooting a bit too much for them, I will do a quick recap now. So this cheap PC, originally out of the box, it was thermally throttling and just didn't want to work properly. In the end, when we eventually did get it working, it was okay, but it did lock up and reduce us down to just 4GB of memory available, which meant that as a system, well, we're going to get 4GB of RAM. Despite being quite speedy, that's not enough to actually get around the modern day. After this, I took the entire PC apart, I cleaned it all up, and it was genuinely filthy in certain places, and I also sorted out the clocks on the processor, sorted out the overheating the best I could, and actually had the system all up and running. And with this, well, it was like running an original Core i7 with a display adapter. It could do a few basic gaming tasks, but certainly wasn't the gaming PC we were promised. Still, at the end of the day, I knew that we had a Firepro in there, and despite not being a gaming card, and despite the fact it's got no actual outputs because it's designed for virtualization, CAD tasks, and 3D rendering, we can actually load gaming drivers on here, which isn't something anyone has ever bothered to try to do because, well, why would you? You can Google S7150X2 gaming, and it's just people saying, no, why would you? What's the point? It's not going to do that. And eventually, after enough troubleshooting, we did manage to get a proof of concept that it can launch games. And I've managed to actually run through somewhat of a benchmark suite to actually give the idea that, you know what, maybe this PC can actually do some gaming. Still, it is a very bodged setup, and in the end we tried multiple different graphics cards. We tried the one it came with, we tried a HD 4350, we tried a Radeon X300, we tried an R7 240, we just tried a varied mixture of cards, and each of them have their own advantages, but none of them actually work very well as an output for a Firepro that doesn't want to be gaming in the first place. Also, there are definitely going to be some people screaming in the comments, why aren't you running Linux? I tested it, and Linux for the most part, even if you try and force AMD GPU drivers on here, it still wants to recognize it as the card it is, the S7150, and it wants to only use it for CAD and workstation and visualization tasks. It does not want to utilize it as a gaming graphics card over on Linux. Maybe if you optimize this through a VM, because I've done that before at work, and you can sort of get it to run, but on an X58 system, we'd be so limited by the processor in that instance, it wouldn't be worth trying to do it. So was it worth it? After 2 days of pretty much constant troubleshooting, trying different things, making things up as we go along, and trying to get performance out of the system, did we actually improve things? Well, out of the box, we scored pretty bad. I mean, the CPU was doing okay given how badly it was thermally throttling, but was still returning a score of 1,845.
which isn't great. After cleaning the system up, sorting out the clocks on the processor and boosting up the graphics card as much as we could, we did actually increase our score up to 259, with most of this coming from the increased CPU side score, which was now up to 2,372. But the big change we made was getting the Firepro working, which I've put in quotation marks because it's a bit of a broad spectrum to declare this working, of which we actually got a really good GPU score of 2,497. Our CPU score went down slightly because it's having to deal with a lot of additional overheads just to try and make this work, but it did bring up our total score up to 2,475. So with the work I've put in, we have netted out a total system improvement of 10 times what it was when we got it out of the box, which is actually quite a substantial amount. I mean, yes, the Firepro is not meant for this, but we have just about got it working. And it's snappy enough to use as a PC. On the desktop, these original Core i7s are just phenomenal to use. And even with 16GB of memory that's only running in triple channel, you know what? It's actually holding its own really well. But there's something you will want to see, so I have done it, and it took the best part of half a day to try and get just some benchmarks run, so do not expect my usual benchmark suite where we test a good range of everything. Today I have just been trying to get whatever will run to run on the system with varying results. At certain stages I've had to change the graphics card, at certain stages I've had to try and change how games launch. It's just been a complete nightmare to benchmark this PC because the Firepro is not meant to be doing this. So I've done my best, and we're not even using a capture card today, because trying to get this to output to a desktop screen was painful enough. Trying to get it to output a signal to an actual capture card was even more of a pain, because some games I'd get them to launch, but they were very fixated on running at specifically 64 Hz, which my monitor, that'll deal with no problems as long as it's over VGA. But in terms of my capture card does not like recognizing 63 to 64 Hz as something it wants to capture, so yeah, it's been a nightmare. Anyway, today it is time to find out, was our £30 X58 gaming PC, if you can call it that, actually worth it in the benchmarks? Starting off the benchmarks, and we have Arc Raiders running with medium settings in 900p. This is of course in windowed mode because full screen got very funny, not so much because of the Firepro, but because of the output abilities of the Radeon X300 we were paired with. But still, after getting it running, we did actually achieve 34 FPS on average, with 1% lows down to 22 FPS. Now, some people may be saying, why don't you use FSR, why don't you use this, why don't you use that, why don't you run with a lower resolution? It pretty much runs the exact same no matter what settings we tried, and given it seemed happiest to launch at medium, I just left it like this. But still, we did achieve an admirable 34 FPS on average, with 1% lows down to 22 FPS, and a lot of this is down to the fact that the R9285 located on the Firepro is actually rather downclocked. So if you're actually able to provide better cooling than what we've provided today, boost up those clocks a little bit, then you'd be in for a really decent time. And you could even use the other card for lossless scaling and maybe try and scale 1080p up to 4K or something. But still, Arc Raiders did surprise me by the fact it even launched. Next up we have GTA 5 Enhanced Edition. And this has driven me to no end of insanity, this title, because the amount of times it would get stuck just initializing to the stage where I tried 3 different graphics cards alone to try and get in-game. But eventually, after enough jiggery pokery, which is probably the only way to describe the amount of bodgery going on here, I did actually get it rendering on the Firepro, with rather decent results. You've got to keep in mind the GT710 can just about manage under high definition resolutions with the lowest settings at 25 to 30 FPS. Whereas with the Firepro actually being utilised, and only half of the Firepro being used, keep in mind, we were able to run the high preset, which has a mixture of high and very high options, in a 1080p resolution with really solid frame times. We got 8GB of VRAM on board, so this resulted to 34 FPS on average, and 1% lows down to 29 FPS. I was going to try going online, but unfortunately we ran into the slight issue of online doesn't want to load on this card and this configuration. Rockstar thinks we're trying to do something sketchy. I don't blame them in this instance, but no, unfortunately we weren't able to go online. If you ever wanted more proof that Mount & Blade Bannerlord works on all kinds of setups, Mountain Blade Bannerlord has a drop-down menu to select which graphics card you want to use, of which it will let you just straight up select the Firepro, and it will work. It has its issues, it won't go into full screen, but it did then restart the game and defaulted to very high and ultra settings in 1080p. So this actually gives us a good idea of how the CPU is going to struggle, because this is quite CPU intensive because it was a large battle size as well, and we returned 48 FPS on average, with 1% lows down to 37 FPS. Any of the hitching and stuttering that did occur was down to the Core i7, which wasn't throttling, but still I hadn't really spent much of my time setting up the processor beyond getting it to stop throttling, so I was just happy to see a good result. But Mountain Blade Bannerlord proves once again the developers, I have no words for the fact that this configuration even works. Cyberpunk 2077 will only launch properly on this PC when the Firepro is paired with the Radeon X300, because it's so old that Windows knows there's nothing else it can possibly launch on. So at this point I'd already put the GT 710 back in the system to try and get to launch GTA 5, and because of this, when I went to Cyberpunk, it was now running at 5 FPS with 1% lows down to 4 FPS. However, that's not really indicative of the entire system's performance, because when we were actually looking at it earlier running on the Firepro, we were seeing anywhere from 25 to 35 FPS in a 720p resolution, which, to be fair, if we were able to configure this and set this up properly without the settings menu dying on us constantly, you could probably get it up to 1080p with a nice mixture of medium settings. I mean, you've got the VRAM for it. So Cyberpunk, no success when you want to run it with a modern graphics card, but providing you're willing to change out your display adapter every time you launch it, you could get anywhere from 25 to 35 FPS. Unfortunately, Counter-Strike 2 was not happy with this configuration in any way. The closest we got it to run earlier was when it looked like the game was going back and forth and just wobbling about on screen. And when I did manage to get it to load on the Firepro, it would throw some sort of anti-cheat error. So, unfortunately, Valve is also not happy with this configuration for fair enough reason. I mean, it really shouldn't be done. But at the same time, CSGO works with no problems. VAC is enabled, anti-cheat works, and we were able to load into a modern server and play a few rounds of competitive with 64 FPS on average and 1% lows down to 51 FPS. I mean, most of the footage was just me dying over and over again, but I will give it credit here. Despite not being a very high frame rate, the i7 was struggling as well here. It's also worth keeping in mind that our frame times were remarkably solid. So the one thing I can give it overall is, no, this isn't really a competitive gaming machine, but it does get decent frame times. That's about the main takeaway I've got out of this entire amount of testing. And for 5 benchmarks, it's probably taken me 5 hours to do this many. So, overall performance of the system, and it's very hard to gauge it to any real capacity, because, well, with just the GT 710 in there, it's pretty much terrible. It's not a gaming PC whatsoever, and when the Firepro does want to work, there is definitely promise there. The problem is that it doesn't work very well, as we've just seen. Provided you don't mind doing all of this troubleshooting between each game you want to play, well, GTA 5 will run with high settings in 1080p, which isn't too bad. Arc Raiders is just about playable, and even Cyberpunk within reason will actually function. But to be fair, pretty much anything that isn't Mountain Blade Bannerlord or CSGO is going to be a monumental nightmare to get running in the first place, as we've just seen. So, in terms of being a gaming PC, I mean, the Core i7 showed some promise. Even in this setup where it's not properly working to its full potential, it didn't really struggle all too much beyond Arc Raiders and maybe during some of the large battle simulations in Bannerlord, so there is promise as a gaming system. The reality is, though, I don't think this PC was ever designed for games. I mean, I bought it as a gaming PC, but we already knew full well going into this that it wouldn't be. So, yes, 5 benchmarks, 5 hours, and possibly the most tedious benchmarking configuration I've ever had to deal with. But it can, in fact, do some gaming, so I'll give it that, I suppose. So there we have it, my Intel X58 Facebook Marketplace gaming PC, and At the end of all this, the main reason I bought it was I bought it for the parts. I want to start doing a bit of X58 testing, and with the price of motherboards actually getting quite expensive these days, being able to buy the complete system with that rather nice Asus board and the Core i7 and the original cooler included for 30 quid was a bargain. But most of this video has been me being perplexed by the inclusion of the Firepro, which I'm half tempted to do a video on. I mean, the reason I bought this PC wasn't so much for this video. I mean, it's been very fun to try and get it working, but there's no denying that most of it has been troubleshooting, which, to be fair, most people that watch this channel actually quite like. They seem to enjoy the suffering of trying to get these oddball computers actually functional, and 5 benchmarks, well, I hope you're happy with it, because that took long enough to even get those done. So I think at the end of this, I mean, I'm happy with my purchase. I spent 30 quid and I've got a rather nice set of components. That X58 setup with the Core i7 is definitely going to need its own video because I love how powerful they are. Admittedly, they are very power hungry for it, but hey, we've got a system we can actually set up the test with now. But more interestingly than that, the Firepro. I am half tempted to give this its own video on a more modern system where it's not hampered down by old PCI Express bandwidth and admittedly being hampered down by an X58 system, so even if we did want to try virtualization and using it that way, we actually have that as a feasible option, because really that is how you're meant to be using these. And even then, the GT710 people have asked me for years can I do a video on one, but I've never once fancied spending 30 quid of my own money on one specifically. But now I've actually got one, hey, maybe we'll actually take a look at the GT710. So there will be plenty more videos coming out of this system, lots of them focusing on the in-depth abilities of the processor, the graphics card, the Firepro, each in their own regard. But as a complete system, this thing is questionable. I mean, it's downright awful. It was clearly someone's workstation PC, they've had it in an office, it's been QC tested, and they've got away with using it. I'd imagine there was a lot of late nights given the amount of nicotine tar in the CPU cooler, maybe waiting on code to compile, maybe waiting on a CAD project, maybe waiting on some 3D rendering. I'm not too sure, but at the same time, they got their use out of it, they pushed it as far as they can, and the moment they started running into problems that we've been facing today, they gave up. And you know what? I don't blame them for it. So thank you all very much for watching. I know this has been a very troubleshooting heavy episode, and there's been some high highs, but some very low lows. So anyway, I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching, and good night.